pūtea pūoru, SOUNZ.
Engā reo wenga mana, raurangatira mā, tēnā koutou katoa. Nau mai, tau mai, and welcome to Inspiring Journeys Through Music, presented to you by Toitiara Puoru, Sound Centre for New Zealand Music. Kua lāna Te Piki Broadson tēnei, and today I'm joined by Pere Wihongi. Are maira. Tēnā koe te manu te ori, e te manu korokoro tūwi. Tau mai nā ki konei ki te wākei mua i a tāua he kōrero rero mau anō. Tēnā kōrero mai, kōrero atu ki te iwi, e te I paku kōrero mau, if you can share a little bit of kōrero about yourself.
Of course.
Hei te tamaiti o te nota, FFN.
Tika kauhautia ki te ao Māori o rei te iwi, o tira a tēnā koe e taku hoa I pōhiri mai I tēnei uri o te tautokera ki tēnei o ngā kaupapa rangatira. Ana ko wai tēnei, ko Pere Wihongi taku ingoa, tēnei taha o taku tinana, no te whare tapu o Ngāpuhi tonu, no Ngāti Wai, no Ngāti Rehua, no Ngāpuhi whānui, ana e te taha taku māma, no muri whenua, no te rarawa, no Ngāti Kuri, no Ngāti Kahu. Tēnei maramara o te taitokerau, kua tau ki kona ki te upoko o te ika a Māui, tiki a taranga. E mihi nui ana kia koutou, o tira kia koe hoa.
No mai. Tau mai rā ki wanga I a tātou. So tell us a little bit more just about growing up in Herekino in the far north, FFN as you say. What was that like for you?
Oh, believe it or not, I actually grew up with a very, very rural upbringing. My whānau, we grew up on a farm in a small town called Herekino, and not many people actually know about Herekino, so it's actually it's lovely to hear someone else say that beautiful name. However, I was brought up under my maunga and on my marae as well, te kohanga reo o Orowhana, where I was lucky enough to I guess have my first exposure of te reo Māori and te ao Māori on my own marae, and I think that has really laid the foundations of who I am as a person, of all of my mahi, but also who we are as Māori and our connection to our own papakainga. So I was very, very fortunate to grow up in Herekino. My grandfather, we actually have a few farms up north, so that was us milking cows, rounding up the cattle.
Quite different to
Oh my God, believe it or not, at te iwi, I used to do it all. Hay fever and all, because I'm a bit of a hay fever child as well. So, you know, sometimes I'd be going up to round up the cattle, come back fat eyes, you know, weeping. But, you know, it was all about the experience. And those memories of my childhood and my upbringing actually have shaped the person I am today in some way, shape or form. So, yeah.
So really down-to-earth upbringing. And with regards to your music career, did that start when you moved to Tāmaki, or was that something that was developing in Herekino?
Well, you know, and when we speak career, I was actually quite late into the music industry, I suppose, but definitely music inspiration was born and bred in the far north and from my grandparents, actually. My sister and I, we would travel around the entire north to every single kaupapa, you name it, tangihanga, weddings, and we were the waiata tautoko for my grandfather, who would always get up and speak and entertain. And so even just watching my koroua kōrero on the marae, wherever it was, he's such a captivating character and speaker. And so we knew we had to support his kōrero with a great waiata. And I think that's kind of what grew and fostered that passion for waiata, but even banished the whakamā of getting up to sing. There's no such thing as whakamā in my family. And it was beaten out of us. Not literally, not literally. Hui anō. We knew that as soon as my grandfather was getting up to speak, you had to be around the vicinity. Don't you dare go toilet. Don't you dare try to go outside, go to the car or anywhere. Because once that waiata tautoko comes, you're in there at 100%. And there's no delays. If he called you out, out, you were getting a kōrero in the car afterwards. So we were kind of like trained little monkeys.
I love that.
We were trained little monkeys. You're going around to all these different kaupapa singing for my grandparents. But what it did was it grew a sense of confidence, I suppose, when performing. And it really did grow that confidence of getting up in front of people and just singing. So that's a real strong part of my upbringing, both definitely up north, but especially when we look into mahi waiata and everything. The other one, my father. Oh my goodness, Te Pere Wihongi. He is a kai kōrero of doom. He just goes and goes. Now, the difference is with Te Pere, his kōrero, long, and then you should see my younger sister, his queen, girls wrapping him up, hurry at the background telling him wrap up now. So when we come to his waiata tautoko, now here's where I think a lot of our training came from when it comes to notes and note detecting, finding your where your note sits in waiata tautoko. My papa, the ultimate jumper, jumps on every single note. You don't know where he's going to go. He start on lead, he's going up on the harmony, going down. And so my sister and I actually found it like a little game or like a challenge that we didn't know where he was going, but it was our job to fill the gap. So wherever he goes, we were filling the gap. And that kind of grew a skill. It grew a little bit of it started off as a game, but then it grew as a skill. So now, honestly, instantly, it's almost like second nature.
So sort of rolling with the punches.
That's it.
And some organically Māori training within the industry.
Yeah,
sort of
I love the way you worded that. Yeah.
Preparing you for later on. And of course, a lot of your more focused on music once you moved to Tāmaki Makaurau. Tell me, what was the transition like for you going from Herekino to Tāmaki and taking some of the skills you'd picked up, roaming around to all of the past, sort of that on-the-spot training, go with the flow, take the cues from the front. What was that like, and how do you carry those into the industry?
Oh my gosh, well, moving from the far north to South Auckland is one extreme to the other. I'll tell you that right now. We were going from the full farm life to the full city life. And it was in Tāmaki where we were schooled at Te Kurikapapa Māori Arohe o Mangere, which is a very, very humble school in Mangere 275. And it was there where I actually gained a lot of exposure to the world, to different musics, to different genres. Because up north, I'm not even joking, e te whānau, and I'm not even over-exaggerating. I thought Ngāpuhi was the only iwi. So I got a sure shock when I moved down to Tāmaki Makaurau, hearing that there's an iwi called Tūhoi. I was thinking, where is that? And actually the whole of our faculty at Te Kurikapapa Māori o Mangere are from Tūhoi. They used to call it Te Kurikapapa Māori Arohe o Manere. In general, not even those from Tūhoi would call it that because of the amount of whānau from Tūhoi. But it was from that whānau, the te moana whānau, all of our faculty who are nurtured and who grew another side of me when it comes to composition. I composed my first waiata when I was down in Tāmaki Makaurau. We moved down here. My great-grandfather had passed away. And this is going from growing up with him in the far north and then moving down to Auckland to hearing that he had passed away. So young, little naive Pere was there with a guitar, so, and I used to have to play it on my lap like this. I don't know why, but that was how I used to play it, composing a song, and I think I was using nuances from Guy Sebastian, Angels. If you can see what I see, something like that anyways. That way do I come, and so I want to mention that because it was nurtured with that composition skill from a really young age at my kura in Mangere, to the point where they actually used to force me to teach the songs to our whare kura at only intermediates. And I think it was there when I kind of developed a passion for arrangements and arranging tunes and melodies and big vocal teams. And really exploring my own composition and how my compositions can enhance those arrangements, and of course, vice versa. But those little skills, I believe, were heavily impacted once we moved down to Tāmaki Makaurau, and then I was opened up to the wild world outside of Ngāpuhi.
So going into compositions, ata ua rirerire, you're talking about the arrangements and a lot of the skill behind composing, but what kind of space do you go into emotionally? Wairua nei I te kōrero koe mo te riro anga o tō koro. So what's that emotional and wairua journey like for you?
I think when we speak to composition, and this is just my own perspective, there's different assets that you're activating once you're composing. Now, with lyrics, it's a heavy mental game. Te taha hine ngaro, koe nā tō tino hoa. When you're writing and you're articulating your thoughts, you're trying to find the most appropriate, relevant, power-hitting words to convey your message, I guess. For me, I lean towards more so the melody and the tune, and I believe that comes under taha wairua. It's how you're feeling. There is a taha hine ngaro to that aspect as well, but for myself personally, melody and composing tunes is a real spiritual process. Doesn't mean you have to be spiritual, but it does activate that taha wairua in you. Simple examples is that, it's just a simple change of a note or a melody that can change the impact of a whole song. One change of a note group can literally change how that song impacts the listener. And I think a lot of that I was able to grasp, what going through kura. But when I'm going into my composition modes or moods, kaupapa is key. Kaupapa is what dictates the mood. Kaupapa is what kind of tells you how you should be feeling, what you should be saying. But don't get me wrong, I've written songs that have come tune first, and then you're like, oh, this tune feels like it should be talking about this. But a lot of my composition, not only in Māori music, but especially within kapahaka, a lot of it is driven by the kaupapa. And so with that first composition of my grandfather passing away, and without even realising that was a kaupapa that I would be passionate about, it in one way, in one somehow or another, it definitely encouraged me to release my emotions, and it was at that moment where I knew composition of music is something that I am passionate about.
Tēnā koe yo roi mata karere waiata mai ki te ao. So thinking about some of your own compositions, I think of High on Ingo Ingo, absolute fave from 2019. The same year, you were announced the Māori Artist of the Year.
Yes, Māori Male Artist at that, oh good God.
Nonetheless, Māori Artist of the Year.
That's it, thank you, love it.
So thinking about your own ingo ingo, your own passions, your own desires, what were some of those earlier ones and how were they sort of fostered? I think about also ngā manu kōrero experiences. We see a lot of our winners and even those who've just stood at ngā manu kōrero, whether they've placed or not, actually have some pretty strong ingo ingo themselves and go quite far. Ko koe tērā I toa I te rātou, te taa mo te kore mako, me te taa Māori tai ai te tūranga tuarua. Kōrero mai, what were some of your ingo ingo, some of your own passions?
Well, it's quite ironic that you bring those two kaupapa up together, in that I composed ingo ingo in my last year of school. During the manu kōrero journey, and it was really just to remind myself or reassure myself of the final goal or where I'm striving towards. Look, manu kōrero has been such a impactful event in my life, not only for the skills that it fostered whilst experiencing that kaupapa, but even the context. The context that I've still got hoa manu kōrero. Back then we were fighting against each other for the spot competition. Now we're the best of friends these days, and it's actually that event there that has fostered those relationships as well. I think with manu kōrero, what it's been able to afford myself is the skill to, I guess, articulate myself, which I know isn't it isn't a strong asset in some of our rangatahi Māori. And so I do believe that kaupapa like Manu Kōrero do encourage that articulation, message conveying skills that we naturally have, but may not necessarily foster within ourselves. And then, of course, at Manu Kōrero, your girl was still singing on the Manu Kōrero stage. I actually used that as an intro one time. I started singing, done my little kaupapa, and then I snapped. I said, "Oh, sorry, we're on competition. We're not in American Idol right now. No, we're in Manu Kōrero."
Manu waiata.
Manu waiata, koina. But you're right. Manu Kōrero has influenced and impacted so many Māori and Māori artists. So we've got the likes of Ria as well, who is a past Manu Kōrero speaker. These types of kaupapa not only help our, our orators, but even our performers. It is, at the end of the day, Manu Kōrero is another platform to express emotions, to express your karere, your messages that are close to your heart, and that is exactly what it is like doing mahi waiata. Obviously through a different format, but with the same intention, to provide a platform for our rangatahi Māori to share their messages and their thoughts.
Ana. About expressing ourselves, sharing our messages, our thoughts, which brings me to a kaupapa that I really want to talk to you about. Te matatini, here ngā waka, here ngā tangata, kei te hoki ngā maara ki tō tū mō angi tū. And what an event, what a stand. And I think you had the whole motu and even overseas talking about the performance. Controversial, some would say. Yeah. Was that intentional?
Look, I'll be honest, it was definitely intentional to disrupt the kapahaka space.
Tell us what it was, the messages that you were bringing onto the stage. Yes,
well, in our campaign this year, leading up to Te Matatini, being a new kapa and a young kapa at that, this was our first Matatini as angi tū, and so we knew we needed to leave a lasting impression or an impact at least. Look, I'm not into just going into kaupapa just to attend. When I'm in kaupapa, I'm investing everything into it, so that everything that I do is intentional, and Matatini was exactly that. I'll be honest though, I didn't expect the controversy to kind of pan out the way it did, but I embrace that because I think it's in that uncomfortability, it's in that disruption that people are forced to speak about issues. And in this particular case, it was about representation on the Matatini stage, where for so long we have perpetuated this black and white narrative of no, he tāne koe, me tū tāne, he wahine koe, me tū wahine. And even for our whanaunga who are whakawahine, me tū wahine koe. Whakatāne, me tū tāne koe. There was no in between. Long story short, there's nothing there that kind of forwards or represents what our community actually is. And so we did think it was a responsibility on our end, actually, to, I guess, shed that representation. Although it was a little bit uncomfortable, I'll be honest, the week before Matatini, we actually had a big wānanga ā-rōpū, and it was there that I actually apologised to the kapa, knowing how risky taking the stance was. Let's be honest, it's a competition, and the biggest guilt that was sitting on my end prior to taking the stage was going through months and months of practice, and then get to Matatini only for all of that months and months of practice to go down the drain because of a stance that both myself and Tūhoi took. And when we expressed that, there were tears, just not knowing. It was the unknown. How will people react? How will people respond? How will the judges mark us? And it was actually at that point that our kapa reassured us of our stance and their support in that sense. So we couldn't have had regardless if the judges had responded negatively or not, which they didn't. The fact that we had the support of our whānau, of our community, to shed that type of performance, to show that type of representation through the poi, through the haka, through mahi waiata. That's all that mattered to us. And then the fact that it actually left a lasting impression on the wider community was the reassurance, actually, of all of those emotional breakdowns that we went through just to get to that moment. So I'm actually really thankful for the support of our kapa, but also the support of our wider whānau for being so open. We weren't too sure if we were too early, if the iwi was ready for this particular type of stance. But I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I did, and I'm so glad we went through that, because I can now see after the many competitions post Matatini, and then even just having mana kuratahi recently with all of our kapahaka babies, it was then that I was reassured of that action being timely for our people.
Anna, apparently our motu, our people are prepared and ready to have these conversations, because I think that's what your stance, a lot of your performances, a lot of your waiata do. They have this impact on us. Ka waka wānanga I te motu. It gets us talking, it gets us bringing these topics to our dinner tables, and it can be confronting. There's some people at the dinner table that aren't too happy to have this discussion, but it's brought before us, and we're put into a place where we have to have this discussion, because usually there's someone at the dinner table and it means so much to them. And so he mihi tēnei ki a koe ki a koutou.
Kia ora.
Thinking about some of the messages that come through your waiata, that come through your art, and eventually make its way to our dinner tables and our intimate circles, what are some of the really important messages that you try to get out there?
I think within my music career to date, a lot of my focus has gone towards language revitalisation and using te reo Māori as a key to inspire our rangatahi. And can I just say, it is one of the best tools to inspire, to really activate excitement within our tamariki, within our rangatahi, waiata and te reo Māori. They are two of the best keys to not only inspire and excite them, but also to mobilise our communities. And so I think that's been a huge part of my focus in the waiata that I've been releasing is, does this waiata, one, encourage the use of te reo Māori, and two, does this waiata or does this composition inspire, or does it have the potential at least to inspire our next generation? And so a lot of that, although when composing in my creative zone, it's not like I'm literally thinking about that. Oh yes, I'm going to write this line to inspire them. It just comes naturally. But in terms of the output and the intention of where I'm releasing the music, where I'm performing, and the kaupapa that I'm attaching myself to, it definitely has everything to do with that. With te reo Māori, with rangatahi Māori, and the growth and development of both.
Tāua. Now, as you talk about te reo Māori and the revitalisation of our reo, I'm thinking about the language that you use in your waiata. Some of your waiata completely in te reo Māori, other waiata in reo rua. Can you tell us a little bit more on why you compose waiata reo rua, why that's so important, and actually the thinking behind it with regards to, I'm sort of thinking about our wāna who are just starting to come onto the journey. We're not wanting to leave them behind. Perhaps that's some of the wakaaro that goes on.
No, you're right. Okay, so there's kind of like two perspectives to this. With regards to te reo Māori, my full immersion reo Māori waiata, that journey started with Mai Moa, our little Maori pop group that was put together back in the mid-2010s. In response to the declining stats of Māori speakers. And so that was the birth of Mai Moatia, the song written by the amazing Te Hau Mihiata. And then it was following Mai Moatia and the reaction and response that we gained from the iwi that we committed to releasing more songs, to establishing Mai Moa as an official group. Thus the release of Wairua, of Kawea, of all of our Mai Moatia songs with a 100% intention and purpose of promoting te reo Māori. Now, when I talk to Hai o Ingo Ingo or Reo Rua, actually, now that I think about it, I think that type of composition is just the way of the world. I had no intention at all with that. Actually, I wrote that song my last year of kura, and it was because I had grown up in kura, full immersion, te reo Māori, my whole life. And actually, in my last year of school, I wanted to explore and trial out different languages, which is how Hai o Ingo Ingo came about. I knew I didn't quite want to make it like your typical old waiata reo Pākehā. I knew I wanted to have some kind of flair and some kind of representation. Hence the birth of Hai on Ingo Ingo, which is that determination and drive. And that actually became my first waiata I ever released as a solo artist. I think I've been loving actually the increase of waiata reo Māori, but also waiata reo Rua. You look at the magic of 35 and Roa Bruha and that waiata in itself going global on TikTok and viral, but also it allowing access to our language in a way that everyone can understand, reo Rua. And then you've got beautiful artists like Mohi with Ataro, which is currently one of my favourite songs. I want that song sung at my wedding one day. These types of songs, I feel reo Rua language, waiata reo Rua, are a vehicle, like you said, a way to offer our language, offer access to our language in a way where all people can connect and relate to it and also understand. I can understand that when we sing full te reo Māori songs, it can be a little bit overwhelming for some of our kai whakarongo. So offering different options and varieties of language, language capacity, I suppose, or language percentages in songs is a beautiful way to extend our language, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about the massive amount of success that come from a lot of these waiata that you've been talking about, that you've been involved with. You did mention wairua. Were you prepared for that? Did you see that coming?
The wairua was not prepared, I'll tell you that right now. Well, only because now wairua is a really tricky track, because when we composed that, we literally were just jamming. And the whole room, everyone was like, oh, yeah, you go and take this verse, you go and take this verse. Oh, no, you take the verses, you take the pre-choruses, I'll take the choruses. And then we'll come back, slop it all together. We finished it, and then we assigned. Okay, so I might not have worked on the first verse, but I'll be assigned the first verse to the singing. That's how we kind of manage our songs as Mai Moa, composed together and then assigned together. With wairua, it was in the early stages of Mai Moa. We were self-establishing ourselves, navigating our way through the music industry. Actually, the video clip in itself, I told everyone, all right, everyone put a $200 in for our video clip. There were 12 of us. We had $2,400 for our video clip. And so what we did was we just hired out a studio.
Wow.
We hired out one of the camera operators. We paid for William Wairua to come up to Tamaki Makoto. We bought some of the Oli powder, the powder, and we just literally just went. Go for it. Have a sing in front of the camera. I'm pretty sure it was one of my old cameras that shot Wairua anyway. Sing in front of the camera, do your thing. Once we finished it, edit it, and we sent it out, we weren't, we didn't realize that it would get such a reaction, and it was that year that Wairua became New Zealand's most watched YouTube video clip. But I say there's two sides because we were still experiencing, I will say, discrimination in our waiata, in our release, from simple things like forwarding airtime. For this waiata, we knew 100% that our communities were hungry for it. We knew that our communities were listening to it. We were seeing the views, we were hearing it played left, right, and centre everywhere but mainstream radio. And so what that meant was it kind of put us in a position, even though we would have been the most watched YouTube clip, even though the song was widely spread throughout the year, it also meant that because we couldn't get onto mainstream airwaves, we weren't charting. And inevitably what that meant was we weren't making it in anywhere in the mainstream music industry. When we pushed and challenged for wairua to be played on mainstream radio, not that that's the determining factor to a successful waiata, however, to be placed on rotation meant that your waiata gets more exposure. The answer that they gave us was the fact that it was not in English. The irony was that the number one track at the time that was playing was Despacito, and which is in full Spanish. So there was a lot of contradictions going around, and there were a lot of battles being had. And obviously, as young, naive little Māori kids trying to figure out what the heck they are, let alone push their music out into the world, it left us to kind of forge our own pathway in the music. So we're very, very lucky to have tutors like Rob and Silla, to have Maisie, and even the likes of Tony as well, who have worked tirelessly in releasing more waiata reo Māori, which actually set the foundations for our kaupapa maimoa to flourish and to continue on in our mahi waiata.
Tēnā koe, tēnā oki koutou o maimoa. So you've addressed a couple of hardships there, and I want to come back to the funding side of things and putting into the kohakete, if you like. But this issue with battling with mainstream media, essentially to be recognised, if you can tell us a little bit more detail about how you went about that and how you were able to persevere and come out with your wairua and mana intact more than anything else.
I suppose when we were navigating ourselves in the early days of Maimoa, there was a lot of naivety and not knowing where we could go with Māori music and not knowing what could be done as well with Māori music. Our examples were the likes of Dalvanius and Pūtea Māori Club, who had spread poie around the world, who had gone to number one, and so that was what we were striving to. But of course it was figuring out how to get there. And I think that's one of the hardest challenges, I suppose, when working in the music industry. And then on top of that, trying to find sustainability in the industry. We were all working full-time jobs and trying to bring together, and also we still had, some of our members still had kura. And so it was trying to bring everyone from all of their different lives into the studio, create music, and then once we felt, yes, this waiata does have the potential, this waiata, this kaupapa has impact to, I suppose, influence our communities. The challenge then became, how do we share that? How do we get the exposure that it deserves? Back then we didn't have TikTok. It was the early stages. YouTube was the master of social media. Facebook as well was the master of social media. And so I suppose I've really been enjoying seeing the increase of waiata reo Māori these days, and we've got platforms now to share our music, to spread our music. That doesn't mean that we have to rely on those mainstream sources to push our music out. But in terms of our own interpersonal challenges when working with mainstream media, I'll be honest, it felt tokenistic. A lot of our appearances, a lot of our interviews and collaborations with mainstream platforms, it did feel like they were ticking the brown box and that we were the ones ticking it for them. One, it gave them another stat of brown content for their platform. But I don't feel like it was fully justified or that it was fully utilized. If anything, I felt exploited. And so a lot of what we're doing now, especially within my moa, is trying to assist in our next generation of kaiwaiata, of composers, so that they're able to, of course, navigate their own pathway in te ao waiata, but not fall into the, I guess, same mistakes that we've experienced, and that isn't repeated again. Look, I know now that mainstream media and radio platforms have now finally committed to having more waiata reo Māori on their airwaves, which is absolutely beautiful. It wasn't always like that, but I'm glad that we're making progress.
Ka pai no reira, kei te rongo I te ara wakamua, and it's really about passing on your knowledge, your experiences to others so that we can move together, we can move forward. I want to go back to you mentioning putting that ruarau tara, that $200 into the kit so that you could put this amazing waiata together, wairua. And so it wasn't as if you had a huge amount of funding, a huge amount of support. It was really one another and your ope tautoko, those around you who supported you. So for some of our artists, our up-and-coming artists, or even our established artists who are trying to produce their music, trying to get out there, but don't necessarily have a lot of that financial support or any equipment, special equipment, what would some of your advice or tips be for them?
Don't expect. I think that's like a big dream that we have growing up, is that, oh yes, we're going to be picked up by a label and then they're going to pay for everything and then we're going to do everything. Well,
was that some of the thinking you had?
100%. I thought I was going to be picked up by Beyonce or something. Like, you know, that whole dream of being signed to a label and all of that kind of jazz, you know, it's not what they make it out to be. And also those opportunities aren't just given out left, right and centre. So those types of examples of just self-funding your own content is a huge part actually to building your own brand, to building your own, I guess, experience and calibre of mahi as well, especially when we don't have easy access to that funding. We're in a new space now where technology, it's so amazing now. We can manage music and record things just like that. You don't need the big flash studios to go and record your waiata. You actually don't need a big flash camera to film your waiata. It really just comes down to the power of your content. Whether it is composition, whether it is waiata, whether it is the filming of your content, a lot of that, I suppose, goes right back down to your own ingenuity as Māori, as kai waiata as well. So if there's anything that I could share on that note is, don't expect that you're going to get the $1 million. Actually, currently the Māori music industry isn't sustainable. Let's be very honest. There are very few artists, Māori artists, that are being able to, I guess, pay their rent and their kai solely on artistry alone. And so I guess that would be the goal, is that we have a music industry that matches the caliber of Bollywood, of K-pop, of our Latin music, that and that this industry does have the potential to, of course, become sustainable for our uri Māori, so that, wow, we're not having to literally... okay, no, I won't go down that. Long story short, within my moa, we've got different jobs. We're presenting here, some are doing factory working here, some are teaching over here, and then we get to a performance and you're literally a whole different persona. People think that we're just solely performers, but actually we've got different lines of mahi and contracts that we have to follow to feed the whānau, to pay the rents and to have a house over our head. So yeah, I'd probably just I don't mean to burst bubbles or break the hope. this job, kai waiata Māori, composer, is a huge and very important role. It is not for the faint-hearted. And it is not definitely at this stage sustainable financially, but it is definitely 100% sustainable spiritually and holistically.
Kia ora. I'm glad that you added that in the end, actually, because I was sitting here thinking, this sounds like really hard work.
Why the heck are you doing it then?
And then you remind me of how, you know, the emotions we feel when we listen to the waiata, and that's such a taonga, and to move people's hearts, move people's minds. I think that's what keeps us attached to the dream and to the massive goal of actually just connecting with one another.
You're right. And if you look into the history of, I suppose, te iwi Māori, our libraries, all of our archives, all of our history, our whakapapa, kōrero tūtohu whenua, experiences, they all come through song. And they've survived through millennia, through years and years, through waiata. And that to me shows the importance or the mana of waiata, of composing, and that everything that we compose, everything that we create will be the archive for the next 200 years down the line. And so it's on my end trying to provide an accurate depiction of our current situation, because we're literally the tupuna of the future. So when they're referring back to us, I want to ensure that they have efficient examples and that representation is there. We're finding it hard at the moment to find examples of takatapuitanga in our compositions. There are actually quite a lot, but it's really just bringing those out so that our people know and can reference those experiences within composition and mahi waiata. But I think why I wanted to mention that is because that in itself shows the importance, or I guess the responsibility even as a composer, as a kai waiata Māori, is that just like our mōteatea 500 years ago composing and speaking to their present, that's exactly what we must do in our present, so that our mokopuna, our uri whakaheke, have efficient, have appropriate, and of course have amazing references for them to learn off, hopefully. Touching wood. Touching te rauparaha.
Tēnā koe te rauparaha. So you truly are following in the tapuwai of your tupuna, of our tupuna, and even illuminating tapuwai that perhaps have not necessarily been covered up, or some of them intentionally covered up, and others perhaps forgotten, that we've become disconnected from. And I think about some of the waiata that you've created yourself, and I'm looking forward to hearing you have a bit of a jam akwane. One of those waiata that really speaks to us is tōrea. Ka wati te tai, ka pau te tōrea. And in this I hear the message of taking opportunities that come your way. What are some of the emotions you want to provoke within our wānau? What are some of the thoughts you want to inspire? Share with us a little bit more about that waiata. And just thinking about this as a composition by a tupuna that will be left for our mokopuna. Yes. Kōrero mai.
Yeah, tōrea will be my mōteatea that I leave for our uri whakaheke. Look, tōrea, I was lucky enough to be involved in a collaborative project of artists called Te Kākano. And it was there where we were given studio time, we were just given wānanga time, and they said, look, just compose and record. And that's all we had to worry about. We didn't have to worry about organising all the production here, left, right and centre. So what it then gave was the opportunity to stretch out my compositions. And I remember composing tōrea. Whilst everyone is doing their rehearsals inside the studio, I literally went outside just to get a breath and sat down, and I could hear the melody in my head. It was just trying to find the right kaupapa that fit that melody. It was written all a cappella too, so even just sitting outside and I was thinking, okay, what kind of kaupapa would be relevant to that, but also what kaupapa would be well supported by that tune. And so that's when we looked at different whakatauaki, looked at different thought processes, and ka whasi te tai ka pao te tōrea was the one that called out to us anyway. And it was actually quite ironic because I feel like my whole life I've lived by that saying. I've just never known that saying until, of course, we composed the waiata. But within the waiata, it speaks of once the tide goes out, that's the only opportunity the tōrea bird has to get its kai. Once it comes back in, oh, well, too bad, you miss the opportunity. And so it speaks to that opportunity. Once the tide goes out, you only have that one opportunity to get down and get fed. As soon as the tide gets back, if you haven't eaten, oh, well, starve. You know, that kind of mentality, that was literally my mother. Oh, well, oh, no, tai te karanga mo te kuri, or that kind of, mo te tangata, e rua mo te kuri. But within that, I was always that child. I was always the one just like going for it or doing random like things without even thinking about it sometimes, to the point where it would end me up either on stage in a random singing competition to becoming the CEO of Air New Zealand for the day. Random kaupapa that I was just like, why not? Let's just do it. And so that was kind of the wairua that I had the inspiration behind tōrea. But to match that kaupapa with this melody, I feel like the intention of what I'd want the kaiwhakarongo to experience, or even what I experience as the kaiwhakarongo, is to help inspire me to go for it. You know, when people are at that crossroad and they're like, what should I do? Should I just go home or should I go over here? I'm saying go over here. Do it for the plot. That's what they say these days. Do it for the plot. You know, you've got so many different opportunities and options in your own lifestyle, in your own life experiences. You've got nothing to lose but time. So just go for it. And that's really what tōrea is all about, trying to provoke those emotions for people to go, yeah, let's just go for it. Kei whiti ana te rā, while the sun's still shining, whilst I'm still alive, let's just go for it. And that's what I suppose, the foundation intentions of tōrea is.
A tāua rirerere. A tāua. What should we go for then?
Oh my gosh, I suppose so. I actually haven't sung tōrea in a while, but I will say it is a waiata that's very close to my manawa. So very, very humbled to be able to share this waiata today.
E whiti ana te rā.
Hei whiti ana te rā. Oh, and we've got a takutai right behind us. How relevant.
And our
Mihi hoki
tōrea.
ki te rangatira o tēnei whare, Joan Alome. Apparently this is his whare to you if you didn't know already. So we're feeling all of the hurricanes wairua, all blacks wairua in here. Hopefully that'll give me some kaha for mahi waiata.
Te meke, okay, a koe te tōrea.
Ka pai.
torea kaua e takaroa keriga yeah. Kei whiti ana te rā tai timu tai pari he poto noai ho te wa ka whati ko te tai ka pau te torea yeah. Ka whati ko te tai ka pau te torea ko tahi atu ana tai tinu tai pari he poto noi ho te wa poto noi ho te wa ka whati ko te tai ka pau te torea yeah. Ka whati ko te tai ka pau te torea ko tahi atu ana yeah, yeah. Kei whiti ana te rā Kei whiti ana te rā Keria Kei whiti ana te rā Kei whiti ana te rā yeah. Ko takurite ko te torea ka rere ka topa
That was Pere Wihongi with Tōrea, accompanied by James Illingworth and Te Kawahirangi. This series is produced by Toiteara Puoru Sound Centre for New Zealand Music. All waiata have been provided courtesy of the artists. To find out more about today's episode or more about the music of Aotearoa New Zealand, go to sounds.org.nz. That's sounz.org.nz. Ko lāna Te Piki Broadton tēnei. Thanks for watching. Mā te wā.
Toiteara Puoru Sounds.